Thank you. United States?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United States supports Working Paper 15 and Working Paper 167. It is essential that states work cooperatively to enable performance-based aircraft use of dual-frequency, multi-constellation global navigation satellite systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Chair. Nigeria would like to support the recommendation made by the Russian Federation in Working Paper 150 with respect to the provision of an uplink for confirmation of distress traffic on ELT with respect to GADIS. We, however, take note of the clarification offered by the Secretariat with respect to an earlier state letter issued on the matter, and also the additional information provided by Franks. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Canada?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. With regard to paper 150, we agree with France. Thank you.
Sekna?
Merci.
Thank you, Chairman. SECNA would like to support Working Paper 190 presented by Uganda and Working Paper 283 presented by Senegal. Yesterday, AFCAC presented Working Paper 222 to avoid proliferation of SBAS and do a cost-effectiveness study for the AFI region. And the meeting will be informed about SBAS implementation in Africa. And take due note, yesterday the director of A&B told us that we don't have a technology problem nowadays, and so it's important for the avionics to be operational and for states to be fully part of the system. Thank you.
And thank you. Australia?
Thank you, Chair. We support Working Paper 15, but we wish to consider, for the Secretariat's drafting purposes, the way in which Recommendation 15E is drafted. It seems to be drafted in the negative, as to say, urging states to avoid prohibiting something. I would normally think that the way ICAO drafts its recommendations would be to encourage states to authorise the use of GNS elements. So might be something worth considering. Secondly, in relation to the Working Papers 111, 153, quite happy to support the general thrust of the recommendations, but in Recommendation C in both, there's a reference to ICAO developing SARPs for new constellations. Has a touch of individualism about it. I would have thought that in terms of new constellations, we're obviously trying to encourage multi-constellations rather than single. So again, maybe that's just a drafting issue that we could stay within in relation to the new elements and GNS or something of that nature, rather than the expression new constellations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. United Arab Emirates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The UAE supports Working Paper 15, 190, 283. And with regards to Working Paper 111, we suggest having a primary means of navigation with the coordination of regional GNSS regional signal monitoring centers. We think that's required. With regards to Working Paper 150 and 153, we take note of the Working Paper's contents and we will study the proposals further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indonesia support the Working Paper number 15. We take a note and highlight, especially for the recommendation concerning the continuing the development of sharp and guidance material for the use of existing and future GNSS element, and also the point concerning the request to further develop provision in that for the state to provide GNSS service. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. AFCAC.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Chairman. AFCAC supports working paper 283, presented by Senegal on behalf of the ASECNA member states. And AFCAC would like to also support working paper 190, presented by Uganda. AFCAC agrees with France with regard to the conclusions of working paper 167 from industry. We think that the Africa region is unique in that it comprises some very remote areas, and airspace is an important component of aviation safety, and so AFCAC would like to highlight Africa's unique circumstances and hence the need to pursue the studies with regard to SBAS as explained in Working Paper 283 and echoed by Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia.
Thank you, Chairman. Colombia supports Working Papers 15 and 167. We just have one comment, and that's with regard to how the recommendations are drafted. In Working Paper 15, it says that states should avoid prohibiting use of GNSS that is SARP compliant, and in Paper 167, Action Item D, it says prevent the use of available GNSS elements if they comply with the SARPs. It seems like the wording is contrary to the intent, but I think it's just a drafting problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. That point is noted. It's the same point that Australia made as well, so thank you both for that. Okay, thank you. If there is no more discussion, we'll just take a few minutes to just summarize the discussion and present to the committee. Thank you. Okay, I'm seeing Oman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Oman supports Working Paper 15, in particular Bullet D, where states are urged to take advantage of the improved robustness and performance offered by dual-frequency multi-constellation DFMC GNSS and to encourage related industry developments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just allow the Secretary to make an announcement for the persons in the gallery.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Yeah, just noticed that a few people getting uncomfortable there because we're a bit crowded in this committee. So we've just arranged for the streaming of this committee to go forward in CR3. So that's the main room on the ground floor, the Roberto Kobe room. And you will see this committee being streamed down there, so you might find yourself more comfortable because you'll get a desk and be able to follow proceedings a little more easily if you'd like. You can, of course, follow all of this on your laptop, But if you're a bit uncomfortable, because we're a bit crowded up there, we've arranged for the streaming downstairs. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you very much for the presentation of the working papers this morning under agenda item 2.2, the integrated CNS and spectrum strategy. We will now try to summarize the discussion. As you recall, we did the discussion in 2 batches. The first batch dealt with the long-term evolution of the CNS systems and frequency spectrum access. We dealt with working paper 2037113 and information papers 198, 244, 247, and 251 were also part of that discussion. In summary, the committee recognized the critical importance for aviation of the issues associated with the increasing requirement for access to the limited frequency spectrum globally available. The committee noted the general consensus for the proposal introduced by the working papers presented on this topic. In summary, the consensus included the following points, which will be expanded upon and further detailed in the text of the draft recommendations to be presented to the committee for review. So the comments made would be taken up in the draft report, and we can review that at that time. ICAO should continue to engage ITU in the radio regulatory process. ICAO should launch a study to ensure that CNS systems remain efficient users of the spectrum. The results of the study should be used to develop a performance-based and service-oriented integrated CNS framework as part of the evolution of the global air navigation plan. ICAO should develop provisions addressing the related opportunities in such fields as civil-military interoperability and synergies, unmanned aircraft systems, and suborbital operations, use of internationally recognized standards as means of compliance. In addition to ICAO, states need to actively engage in the spectrum regulatory process to ensure access and protection for CNS systems. States should also ensure, through the implementation of the Safety Oversight Program, that the designated competent authorities are involved in safety case assessments of the radio frequency environment so as to adequately protect the operational availability of CNS systems. Is there any comment or input on the summary? Okay, thank you. In batch 2 papers dealing with the GNSS evolution, working papers 15, 111, 150, 153, 167, 190, and 283 were presented and discussed. In addition, relevant information papers are 200, 201, 240, 246, 249, 290. The committee noted that DFMC GNSS can provide operational benefits by improving performance and robustness for all GNSS applications based on GNSS. The benefits will be gained progressively as aircraft become equipped with DFMC avionics. The long-term goal to be achieved is global acceptance of ICAO standardized GNSS elements for lateral navigation. The committee noted that there are technical and regulatory challenges to be overcome to achieve that goal, as it has been confirmed by the thorough discussion. The draft recommendation that will be presented to the committee for review will be based on the Secretariat working paper and include additional elements on which consensus has been achieved in the meeting. Thank you. Any comment or discussion? Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for their input and the discussion, and to thank the Secretariat for the well-presented papers and clarifications provided. Thank you. Okay, the next agenda item is 2.3 for future provisions of aeronautical meteorological service. So just give us a few minutes whilst we set up for the secretary. Just. Okay, thank you. So we move to agenda item 2.3, future provisions of aeronautical meteorological service. Under this agenda item, we will discuss the future provisions of the aeronautical meteorological service. There are 9 working papers and 6 information papers, which we will do in one batch. I now ask the Secretariat to present working paper number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Working paper 3 presents to the conference an overview of the development of the global requirements for aeronautical meteorology, which are in progress since the Meteorology Divisional meeting held conjointly with WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, in 2014. The same meeting formulated 29 recommendations, confirming and making some adjustments to the meteorological component of the Global Air Navigation Plan. In the discussion part of the paper, in paragraph 2, the paper highlights the enabling function of the aeronautical meteorology. You will see in the paper the new aeronautical meteorological initiatives which are actively being developed by ICAO. In this regard, the paper highlights the development of standard and recommended practices for the provision of space weather advisory information. The paper also highlights the future provision of information to en route hazardous meteorological conditions. This is in SIGMET format. And the future provision is expected to be focused on the met phenomena rather than the information being constrained by flight information regions boundaries. This is because more and more the nature does not recognize borders. You will see also highlighted the cost recovery issue related to the multi-state provision of aeronautical information. Also, the significant impact expected on the aviation system for climate change and associated extreme events. And finally, the paper refers to the issues related to the global exchange of meteorological information via the system-wide information systems based on a specific ICAO meteorological information exchange model, or IWXXN, as is known. In light of the significant benefits that can be obtained with relatively low level of investments, the conference is invited by the recommendation in the paper to support the future provision of aeronautical meteorological service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We now invite the United States to present working paper 57.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present this paper on behalf of the United States of America. Meteorological phenomena that pose a hazard to aviation operations often extend over large geographic areas and impact multiple flight information regions, FIRs. The current means of disseminating information about hazardous weather conditions for aviation is the SIGMET product, which is produced in accordance with provisions of Annex 3. It is only issued within the boundaries of a single flight information region. This leads to the issuance of inconsistent information about the same meteorological phenomena spanning multiple flight information regions. In addition, some areas of the world there is a complete lack of information about the location and severity of hazardous meteorological conditions. This reduces the safety and efficiency of international civil aviation operations. Also, when multiple flight information region SIGMETs are well coordinated amongst states, it puts an undue burden on many users to look at several different SIGMETs for one single phenomenon. Recognizing that a lack of information, incomplete information, or inconsistent information about hazardous weather conditions exist in many parts of the world, the 2014 ICAO WMO Meteorology Divisional Meeting adopted a recommendation to develop and implement a regional hazardous weather advisory center concept to mitigate this lack of meteorological information available to aviation decision makers. Subsequently, the aviation user communities expressed a strong preference for the provision of globally harmonized, phenomena-based hazardous meteorological information that is not limited by the boundaries of flight information regions or other geopolitical boundaries as a means to both ameliorate current information deficiencies and support the implementation of multiple operational capabilities identified in the aviation system block upgrades in ICAO's Global Air Navigation Plan. The scientific and technical capabilities of national meteorological service providers are constantly improving, which allows for the provision of more accurate, higher resolution, and more timely information about hazardous weather conditions than is currently available in the SIGMET product. The capabilities to produce and disseminate globally consistent, phenomena-based hazardous weather information already exist. This information can be used to produce regional scale information about hazardous weather conditions that is consistent across multiple flight information regions. As an enabling capability of the Global Air Navigation Plan, the functional and performance requirements for meteorological information must be developed based on the needs of future operational capabilities. Several of the aviation system block upgrade modules must be enabled to improve meteorological information to realize the full benefits of implementation. In particular, the ASBU modules related to continuous descent and climb operations, trajectory-based operations, and wake turbulence are all enabled by meteorological information. To ensure the provision of aeronautical meteorological information required to support full implementation of future operational capabilities described in the ASBUs, close coordination between ICAO panels is required. Without adequate coordination between panels, the incorporation of the standards and recommended practices for the required meteorological information into Annex 3 will not be completed in time to support full implementation of new operational capabilities, delaying the realization of the benefits of those capabilities. In conclusion, improved meteorological information is recognized in the Global Air Navigation Plan as an enabling capability for several ASBU modules. The aviation users have articulated a clear need for meteorological information that is not constrained by flight information region boundaries to improve the safety and efficiency of international air navigation. Close coordination across ICAO panels and with aviation users is required to develop the requirements for aeronautical meteorological information to support the full implementation of future operational capabilities. The United States invites the conference to consider the recommendation in paragraph 3.3 of this paper. On behalf of the United States, we welcome the opportunity for collaboration amongst ICAO, member states, and industry in improving the provision of information about hazardous meteorological conditions around the globe. This concludes my presentation of Working Paper 57.
Thank you very much, United States, and I now invite you to present Working Paper number 60.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present this paper. The provision of aeronautical meteorological service is critical to the safety and efficiency of international air navigation. In addition, the meteorological information is identified as an enabling capability necessary to implement multiple aviation system block upgrade modules described in ICAO's Global Air Navigation Plan. Furthermore, the exchange of aeronautical information, including meteorological information, in the system-wide information management environment is critical to achieving the operational improvements associated with the ASBU modules. National Meteorological Service providers most domestic weather information provide most domestic weather information in traditional alphanumeric code. While many ICAO contracting states have begun transitioning to providing meteorological information in the SWIM-compliant ICAO Meteorological Information Exchange Model, or IWXXM, a large number of states have not yet started the transition to providing data in IWXXM format and may never be able to do so. ICAO recognized that many states might experience difficulty in transitioning to providing meteorological information in IWXXM format and postponed the applicability date for IWXXM to become a standard in Annex 3 from 2018 to 2020. It should be noted that unlike the Aeronautical Information Exchange Model and the Flight Object Information Exchange Model, which are both unique to the aviation industry, IWXXM is a joint effort between ICAO and the World Meteorological Organization, which governs the national meteorological services. Thus, any change to IWXXM requires a significant lead time, as the change is subject to both ICAO processes for amending Annex 3 and the WMO change management process. It is crucial that aeronautical meteorological information be exchangeable between SWIM-enabled systems. However, it may not be necessary for all states to provide domestic weather information in IWXXM format. ICAO, in close coordination with WMO, provides the requisite policies and procedures to allow designated entities, such as operational meteorological data banks, to convert information in TAC format into IWXXM. Then individual states that are unable to transition to IWXXM will be able to arrange for the information in TAC format to be translated into IWXXM format for the purpose of data exchange and international exchange. The conference is urged to understand that for a variety of reasons, not all national meteorological services will have the capability to transition from TAC formatted information to IWXXM formatted information. Furthermore, this situation is entirely acceptable provided that ICAO and the WMO develop the appropriate policies and procedures to ensure that aeronautical meteorological information from all states is available in IWXXM format. In conclusion, to ensure that the aeronautical information, meteorological information is globally harmonized and accessible by aviation users via SWIM-enabled systems, ICAO should encourage states to transition from exchanging aeronautical meteorological information in IWXM format. A means to encourage states to make this transition is to cease support for providing information in TAC format in the Annex 3 and provide appropriate options for states unable to transition to IWXM at the local level to translate information in TAC format to IWXM for the purpose of data exchange. It should be noted that the Meteorology Panel met in September 2018 and endorsed several recommendations regarding the provision of meteorological information in IWXM format. As a result, the recommendation in this paper should be updated to reflect the decisions by the Meteorology Panel. The United States invites the conference to consider the following amendment recommendations in paragraph 3.2 of this paper. A, endorse the exchange of meteorological information for the aeronautical purposes only in the ICAO Meteorological Information Exchange Model, IWXXM, format, as the only standard after 2026. Request ICAO, in close coordination with WMO, to agree that the exchange of aeronautical meteorological information in traditional alphanumeric code format no longer be required to be distributed after 2026, and request ICAO, in close coordination with WMO, to expeditiously develop the policies and procedures necessary to convert meteorological information from TAC format to IWXXM for the purpose of data exchange to support international air navigation and as an interim step towards IWXXM being the only standard. This concludes my presentation of Working Paper 60. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States. Now we invite Japan to present Working Paper 101.
Thank you, Chair. This paper discusses global needs of the promotion of further utilization of space weather information service through closer coordination between users and service providers. This paper is co-sponsored by Australia, Canada, and France. The 78th amendment to ICAO Annex 3 will soon become applicable on 8th November. This amendment includes the implementation of space weather information as advisory information to airline operators, air navigation service providers, and flight crew members. Space weather information centers will be established to monitor space weather phenomena and provide information on space weather at global and regional scales. The contents of the space weather information include the levels of space weather impacts on CNS systems and radiation risk to flight crew members and passengers. Details of the space weather information are described in the Space Weather Information Service Manual, which is being published as a new ICAO manual. Operational needs of space weather information are still growing. For example, the Space Weather Information Service is expected to help users mitigate the ionospheric impacts on GNSS to realize safe and efficient aircraft operations. However, there still exists a gap between the space weather information to be provided and users' operational needs. Appropriate guidance on how to use the information to fulfill the user's operation needs is necessary. For this, feedbacks from the users based on their operational needs and experience are essential, and also highly advanced researches on the impact of space weather phenomena on aeronautical systems are necessary. Through closely coordinated actions between all the relevant stakeholders, the Space Weather Information Service will become more and more useful for aviation users. In April this year, MEDP and NSP agreed to further coordinate between them for improvement of the Space Weather Information Service. This is a good example of such coordinated actions, and Australia, Canada, France, and Japan are willing to contribute to these coordination activities. In light of the above, the conference is invited to endorse the proposed recommendation as in paragraph 3.1 on the further use of the Space Weather Information Service to meet users' operational needs. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Japan. We now have working paper 128 by the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present working paper 128 on behalf of the United States of America. National meteorological service providers are increasingly capable of producing and disseminating weather information for aviation decision makers that cover large geographic areas encompassing multiple flight information regions and states. Aviation users have expressed a need for globally consistent, phenomena-based hazardous weather information to support operational capabilities envisioned to improve the safety and efficiency of international air navigation. This information is anticipated to improve the level of flight safety in areas of the world for which insufficient meteorological information is currently available, and improve the efficiency of operations through better integration of meteorological information into flight planning systems and processes. The ICAO, World Meteorological Organization Meteorology Divisional Meeting in July 2014 recognized the need to review how states, national meteorological service providers, and designated charging authorities currently recover costs associated with the provision of aeronautical meteorological information. The MET 14 meeting adopted Recommendation 4.4, which directed the Secretariat through the Air Transport Bureau and in coordination with the World Meteorological Organization to develop guidance addressing equitable cost recovery practices where aeronautical meteorological service is fulfilled on a multi-regional, regional, or sub-regional basis. Nearly all ICAO contracting states recover costs for the provision of aeronautical meteorological service. The current cost recovery mechanisms are largely based on legacy, text-based weather products that are provided on an FIR, Flight Information Region basis. The mechanisms are likely insufficient to ensure that states, national meteorological service providers, and designated charging authorities will be able to appropriately recover costs as the provision of meteorological information continues to evolve over time. However, aviation users are concerned that any change in the way costs are recovered for aeronautical meteorological service may be consistent with ICAO's charging principles. The transition to the provision of globally consistent, phenomena-based hazardous weather information may affect the recovery of costs for meteorological information and necessitate an update of the mechanisms to recover costs for aeronautical meteorological service. The challenge is to ensure that any update is consistent with key charging principles contained in ICAO's policies on charges for airports and air navigation services, Doc 9082. Specifically, states should ensure that charges are cost-based, non-discriminatory, transparent, and do not cross-subsidize other meteorological services. Additional guidance and clarification is found in 2 economic manuals, Manual on Air Navigation Services Economics, Doc 9161, and Airport Economics Manual, Doc 9562. These documents are maintained by the Air Navigation Service Economics Panel and the Airport Economics Panel, respectively. And both panels provide assistance to the Air Transport Bureau in the area of cost recovery. As noted in the paper, ICAO has previously established specialized groups to address specific issues related to the provision of meteorological service for international air navigation. In particular, the International Volcanic Ash Task Force was convened in July 2010, and the Meteorological Aeronautical Requirements and Information Exchange Project Team was established in February 2012. ICAO has previously established specialized groups or working arrangements to address issues related to financial policies for the provision of air navigation service, including joint meetings of the AEP and AN-SEP to address recommendation revisions of Doc 9082, as well as the supporting economic material included in Doc 9562 and Doc 9161, and a multidisciplinary working group convened after the 6th Worldwide Air Transport Conference. In conclusion, it is important that any changes in how costs for aeronautical meteorological information are recovered remain consistent with ICAO's key charging principles. Addressing this issue requires the collaboration of experts with knowledge of the provision of meteorological information and the economics of airports and air navigation services, as well as ICAO's charging policies. Thus, it would be beneficial to form a multidisciplinary group, including members of the AEP, AN-SEP, and meteorology panel, to identify potential new charging mechanisms to recover costs associated with the provision of aeronautical meteorological service. The United States invites the conference to consider the recommendations in paragraph 2.3 of this paper. A, support the need for expeditiously identify how aeronautical meteorological service provision has changed, how it will continue to evolve, and how these changes may affect the recovery of relevant costs associated with the service provision on a multi-regional, regional, and sub-regional basis. And B, request ICAO to establish an appropriate multidisciplinary working group composed of experts with the requisite knowledge and expertise and in close coordination with WMO to review how the services have changed, what new cost recovery challenges have arisen, and identify possible mechanisms to recover those costs in a manner consistent with ICAO's key charging principles. The findings of this group should then be presented to the Met Panel, AEP, and AN-SEP for further consideration. That concludes my presentation of Working Paper 128. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, United States. I now invite New Zealand to present Working Paper 183.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everybody. In presenting Working Paper 183 on behalf of New Zealand, you will be aware that aeronautical meteorology is a core enabler of civil aviation and features often in the GAMP and the block upgrades. As the science is refined and new technologies are implemented, the critical role played by meteorology is often underestimated or worse, not recognised. This paper seeks to inform states and international bodies so they can better address the management and development capacity needs of the global meteorology program. While some gains have been achieved, the ability to sustain progress is being increasingly compromised as states and international bodies divert resources away from aeronautical meteorology. Section 2 of the paper discusses the significant economic and social value of aeronautical meteorology and its criticality to airline operations in terms of safety and business economics. Section 2.2 discusses the impact of rapid and dynamic climate change on the global circulation and the challenges this poses for local forecasting. Section 2.3 discusses the direction and span of the meteorology program, including that's already discussed and set out in Working Paper 3. These tasks are significant, large, and global in reach. Section 2.3.2 sets out areas of development both within the ICAO program and that of the World Meteorological Organization. These will all bring more fundamental changes. The benefits from this work will accrue, in particular through increasingly effective PBN and TBO operations, adding to the value delivered by the current global programs listed in the following section. As heard earlier here, we have emerging or disruptive technologies that will have their own particular Met requirements into the future. In essence, all of this work recognises the singularity of the atmosphere and seeks to provide globally seamless, phenomena-based big data meteorological information. It underscores meteorology as one of a consolidated and collaborative global effort where services provided by any one state, regionally or globally, are all interconnected and interdependent. Section 2.4 sets out the capacity challenges facing the meteorological effort. In brief, the lack of tangible engagement by states in meteorological program development and systems management. The fact that it is the same handful of experts undertaking the ICAO and WMO work. For example, here today there are probably only 6 or 7 meteorological people. And lastly, the significant reduction of the number of meteorological experts in both the WMO and ICAO over the last 5 years. In conclusion, we believe that meteorology is undergoing a revolutionary change in the nature of the information it provides, how it is provided, and in an environment of atmospheric climate change that brings many challenges. To properly support this revolution, states and UN agencies, especially ICAO, and international user representative bodies need to ensure that they do provide sufficient expert capacity to underpin and inform the work needed. Lastly, the paper notes that without this enhanced support, many of the gains expected from the GAMP may not be realised. A call for much stronger support of the ongoing management and development of the global aeronautical meteorological system is invited in the recommendations, and these are for consideration by the committee. The first is addressed to states and the second is addressed to ICAO. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, New Zealand. Working paper 230 is to be presented by Singapore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Singapore would like to present an overview of the roles and challenges faced by meteorological services in the tropics in their support of ATM operations, so that due consideration will be given when further refining the relevant MET modules of the aviation system block upgrades. The MET thread of the ASBUS provides a long-term strategy to guide the development and full implementation of the next generation aeronautical meteorological services needed to support the future air navigation system. Accordingly, Singapore has been working on customized MET solutions to support tactical decision-making during adverse weather, to support the conduct of air traffic flow management for proactive planning and balancing of demand and capacity, and lastly, to coordinate issuance of SIGMET information for en route operations. However, in tropical regions, weather systems are dominated by thunderstorms that are short-lived, localized, and difficult to forecast, which nonetheless pose significant disruptions on air traffic. In collaboration with the UK Met Office, Singapore has been developing a convective scale numerical weather prediction system. Despite initial improvements, more work is needed to increase the prediction accuracy of tropical thunderstorms. This challenge faced by tropical regions should be taken into consideration when defining SBU performance requirements instead of adopting a one-size-fits-all approach. In addition, this challenge could be further aggravated by the effects of climate change as the frequencies and intensities of thunderstorms in Singapore have been observed to increase over the last 30 years. Such trends lead to knock-on effects on the safety of aircraft operations as well as the capacity of both aerodromes and terminal airspace. Coupled with the growth in air traffic movements, there is a need for a deeper understanding of the challenges faced by the meteorological community in tropical regions, as well as the potential hazards associated with climate change. Singapore would thus like to invite the conference to agree on the recommendations in paragraph 3.2. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Singapore. Indonesia for working paper 275.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the Republic of Indonesia, I will present the working paper 275. Indonesia will present the collaborative decision-making and information system in the framework of volcanic ash handling. This paper presents the procedure and contingency action on facilitation of ATS route in the volcanic ash situation for the relevant service provider and airspace user in Indonesia, and the system used to facilitate the various parties in order to precaution of volcanic ash impact on aviation. On the reference document, Indonesia following the ICAO handbook on the International Airways Volcano Watch, ICAO document 9766, and also Indonesia Civil Aviation Safety Regulation Part 174. On the background, we consider that Indonesia has more than 100 active volcanoes in order to manage and mitigate volcanic ash impact on aviation. Indonesia has developed a VA handling mechanism. It's already present in the picture in the section 2.11. In this mechanism, there are divided based on the task or activity. First one, the activity concerning aerodrome observation that conduct by meteorological office, airport authority, or local aerodrome and also airline staff. The second one, the activity of airspace observation that conduct by air navigation service provider. Third, the activity of validation and analysis of the previous activity, it's conducted by the DGCA as the regulator. Actually, when Indonesia conduct this mechanism, it's need more time by developing a collaborative decision-making and information. So that's why Indonesia developed the system. The name is Integrated Web-Based Aeronautical Information System Handling, we call IWIS. The system is used for the CDM process could be conduct more efficient and make the several process into the window. The system will be launched in the end of 2018. The IWIS system has two modules, consists of volcano module to describe volcano activity, including volcanic map, fauna information, ASTAM, segment, and etc. And the second module provide the collaborative decision-making module to show general information sharing and also provide the function of the real-time communication among the stakeholders involved in the system. And the system, at this time, the system is integrated with the geological entity agency, meteorological agency, and also air navigation service provider. For the development of the system, we propose to have the integration with the VAC there and also Tokyo. It is highlighted for us that it is become a correction of the section 2.13 at the statement of 2.13 in the working paper. In the Asia Pacific project that conduct on September 2018, the representative of ICAO Asia Pacific and other stakeholders saying that the platform is very useful and could assist the monitoring process of the exercise so that the CDM process is well conducted. However, the optimum usage and the use of the IWIS system socialization is absolutely required. For the conclusion, Indonesia proposed that the conference to discuss the CDM system to mitigate the volcanic ash effect to aviation and consider to adopt the mechanism as a model of volcanic ash mitigation to civil aviation. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Indonesia. And the final working paper in this batch is an impact assessment on flight dispatch systems with the deployment of IWXXM for the issue and exchange of aeronautical meteorological information. And this is to be presented by the International Federation of Airline Dispatchers Association.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. It is my pleasure to introduce Working Paper 287 on behalf of the International Federation of Airline Dispatchers Associations. I felt it represents the professional and technical standards and the functional roles and responsibilities of flight dispatchers worldwide. By way of background, flight dispatchers are the unseen eyes and ears of any airline operations, its nerve center. Their daily functions, decisions, and actions rely largely on the interpretation and use of Met services and products. Critical safety decisions relating to routings to avoid inclement, significant weather are constantly being made. Events such as hurricanes, volcanic activity, frontal and convective systems, to name a few. Efficiency decisions are also being made with respect to optimizing TBO and 4D flight trajectories through use of flight planning software that manipulates surface and upper air data forecast at geopotential heights. Met products are also used in compiling flight crew briefing packages to determine the choice of route flown, suitability of destination and alternate aerodromes, and in turn, time, fuel, and load calculations. Flight plans are thus generated, pilots briefed, releases issued, and dispatchers thereafter track the thousands of flights as they fly safely and efficiently from every takeoff to every landing every day. So dispatchers rely on ICAO standards with the confidence that they are globally harmonized for the production, dissemination, and exchange of Met information. On shift, dispatchers are trained, qualified, and licensed to read and process with their cognitive capabilities the traditional alphanumeric code products and chart renderings more commonly referred to as TAC. IFALDA believes that the impending Annex 3 changes effectively represents an irreversible global mandate and will bear significant impact on dispatchers worldwide. Given a variety of end users of Met data by dispatchers, several concerns affecting the current work environment arise, and a few are highlighted here. Would all ICAO states adopt IWXXM standards in 2020 using XML-GML markup language, be globally synchronized and harmonized, or at best interoperable in 2020? What state transition plans are available for international airline dispatchers to track those states that continue to supply TAC data formatted products? How will states supplying TAC formats beyond 2020 exchange data with other IWXXM states at a global level? The transmission of Met agency data via legacy AFTN links, will it continue to function? Will global interchange links for those ANSPs without extended AHMS capability continue to function? A globalized integration of OpMet information into the IWXXM, how would that happen? Designating entities entrusted with OpMet information under IWXXM, would it be the Met service provider, the ANSP, the regional OpMet data bank, or perhaps another state? The overlap of TAC data for domestic Met products and SOP-compliant IWXXM data for international products, for two data streams for dispatchers to deal with at the workstations within a SOP-compliant state. Can the complexities and the time required of two UN organizations be effectively managed within the short time frame, i.e. the IWXXM standards developed by ICAO and the Met standards developed by the WMO? Would several vendor softwares used by airlines be readily adaptable to IWXXM products, or put otherwise, will the benefits be dumbed down to mimic the currently embedded TAC formatted data? Do adequate standards for data quality and accuracy exist? Can the state responsibility for safeguards and governance currently present in TAC data be assured? The conflicting priorities and commercial implications for the air operators and states overseeing them to balance the rising service costs of IWXXM products to determine affordability? Will airlines continue to furnish the basic dispatcher tools and training required for safe dispatch and operational control? Would regulatory approvals to operators in order to use commercial IWXXM slant swim data for operational decision-making by dispatchers and pilots become necessary? In summary, and just 2 years prior to SARP implementation, awareness among dispatchers is very, very low, and much less on state implementation and transition plans. Consequences remain unknown at this stage. The success of the IWXXM program will rely on the ability of all ICAO states to successfully transition from TAC to machine-readable IWXXM data at the 2020 deadline. The benefit of soft timelines will be heavily influenced by the ability of dispatchers as the end users to smoothly roll over in 2020 and also continue to cope with the reality of non-IWXXM compliant states to make safety-critical decisions in flight planning and exercise operational control over each flight. The roles and responsibilities of the state must not be marginalized as the data services are rapidly commercialized. It must be backed by safety oversight towards each air operator, and IFALA considers it critical that flight dispatch adapts with the awareness and agility required to these changes at an equal place as states, big and small, and so that there's no flight dispatcher left behind. The conference is invited to review and agree to the recommendations in paragraph 3.2. IFALA is grateful to the conference and ICAO for this opportunity to present Working Paper 287. Thank you.
Thank you very much, IFALA. I can request support of states for this paper to be discussed. Thank you. So that concludes the working papers presented for this agenda item. So at this time, we will break for lunch, and we'll resume with the clarification from the Secretariat and then discussion on these items. Given where we're going, I can see that probably, well, definitely by after the coffee break, we would be discussing agenda item 3, possibly by 3 o'clock. So we can take that into consideration. So thank you. We'll break for lunch.